Currently right now, the Jujutsu Kaisen fanbase is kind of on fire with Gojo actually passing away in the most recent chapter of the manga, and honestly a lot of people could have seen this coming. A lot of people didn't want this to happen. A lot of people didn't think that Sukuna had it in him, and Gojo basically confirmed in the chapter that Sukuna really could have done this no matter what the circumstances were. Even if he did not have Megumi's curse technique, he essentially could have done the same thing that he did with Gojo, just that I'm assuming it just made it a little bit easier having the 10 Shadows technique to do it. But the way that he did administer the final blow to Gojo does kind of confirm that he only really got the idea of how to do it from Mahoraga, but at the same time he most likely could have done this on his own without having the 10 Shadows technique. So with that being said, today I did want to explain sort of exactly what went on with how Sukuna did defeat Gojo, since with the translations we did get from the leaks, a lot of people aren't necessarily sure exactly what he meant by, you know, all the stuff that he was kind of spieling when he was defeating Gojo. But in today's video I did kind of want to explain exactly what he meant by all of that, how exactly he did defeat Gojo, and why Sukuna really is just the top of the world in terms of Jujutsu Kaisen sorcerers. Like, he really is the most dangerous, the best sorcerer, the strongest. And honestly, like, a lot of people are kind of downplaying him, and you know, it's not their fault. A lot of people saw Gojo kind of, you know, throwing him around, doing whatever, but they never really thought to think that maybe Sukuna is just kind of biding his time and he really doesn't feel that much threatened by Gojo at that time, and you know, he was kind of just letting Gojo do whatever he wants to because he knew he'd get out of the situation fairly unscathed. Before we jump right into the video today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, as I make a lot of different videos very similar to this one. Thank you. The sort of gist of it is that Sukuna looked at what Mahoraga was doing with his adaptations and how he was kind of attacking Gojo, and he thought to himself, I can actually apply this to my own curse technique and give my own curse technique a sort of adaptation the same way that Mahoraga does. And this is some high level Jujutsu tech right here. Like, this is not something your average sorcerer can do, and only somebody on the level of Sukuna could accomplish. But let's dive further into this theory, or you know, exactly what Sukuna did do in the fight. If we go back a couple chapters, we'll remember that Gojo did lose an arm to Mahoraga, and the way that Mahoraga did this threw off Gojo at the time, and it kind of threw all of the readers off also. We weren't sure exactly how he was able to launch an attack at Gojo the same way that Sukuna does, and at the time we were thinking, you know, maybe this is a one-off thing, maybe this is something only intrinsic to Mahoraga, since at this time he was adapting to infinity, he was kind of bypassing it. That is why he was able to accomplish that feat. He was able to bypass infinity to the point where he was able to attack Gojo, and in this instance he applied the sort of cleave aspect that Sukuna does to his attack to give him a sort of ranged attack where he's able to actually hit Gojo. And obviously this is very detrimental to Gojo. This is around the time that Gojo was kind of like, all right, I gotta figure something out. Like, this dude is able to launch out attacks that are able to really hurt me since he's bypassed my infinity. And you know, seeing this happen, we're like, okay, you know, we definitely do need Mahoraga to finish off Gojo. And if you thought this, you wouldn't really be wrong at the time, since we didn't know Sukuna could actually do something very similar, which I'm going to get into. You definitely wouldn't have been wrong to assume that at this time Gojo would have to be defeated by Mahoraga, since Mahoraga kind of has all of the keys necessary to do this. But with what we have in this chapter, we finally understand what Sukuna was kind of going for, and how Sukuna kind of came to the realization that he didn't necessarily need Mahoraga at this point to defeat Gojo. He kind of had the blueprints and everything that he needed handed to him at that point. This is kind of where we get to the present timeline, where Sukuna has actually defeated Gojo, and the way that he did this is, of course, by applying that same aspect of what Mahoraga did to his own cleave attack. And the best way to kind of explain it is that originally his cleave already kind of adjusts its attack power to the amount of cursed energy that the person has. So the more cursed energy you have, it kind of adjusts itself to become more powerful to guarantee that you do deal damage to them. But at the same time, this didn't bypass Gojo's infinity, because there was still that space in between the attack and Gojo that really could not connect. And obviously we see the best example of this, you know, throughout Gojo's fights, the fact that he isn't able to get hit unless somebody uses domain amplification. But in doing that, you have to shut off your curse technique. So Sukuna kind of had to trade, at least himself, you know, do I want to hit him? Well, then I'm gonna have to turn off my curse technique. If I use my curse technique, I can never reach him because it can't get through that space that is in between Gojo and myself. But what if, using the same ideas from Mahoraga, I am able to do exactly what they did and eliminate the space in between me and Gojo and guarantee that it does hit? And that is exactly what Sukuna did. Sukuna took the fundamentals of what Mahoraga did in the fact that Mahoraga had adapted to infinity itself but applied a sort of cleave effect to that attack, and it was able to hit Gojo, and Gojo was able to get hurt by this. So Sukuna saw it and said, hey, I can do the same thing, but apply an effect onto my cleave to where it will erase the space in between me and the target along with the attack, and this would be able to get through his infinity, get through Gojo's defenses, and actually hit him. And this is exactly how he did it without having to resort to using domain amplification. He was able to use his own innate technique and have this hit Gojo, and honestly, it's very crazy when it did happen. I'm also starting to wonder if maybe Sukuna had this idea since the start of their fight, since we do remember there was a point where he kind of hit a cleave or a dismantle at Gojo, and Gojo looked kind of confused as to why it really didn't do anything, and I feel like this was kind of Sukuna realizing, hey, there's still like space in between us. I can launch the attack, but there's still a sort of space in between us that isn't allowing me to get through him, and this is probably the point at which where he realized I could actually use Mahoraga's adaptations to get my adaptation onto my innate ability to be able to bypass Gojo's defenses. A lot of people will say that this doesn't make sense, this is kind of gay, you know, throwing this out, making, you know, something that shouldn't work, but it does make complete sense. This is not, you know, your run-of-the-mill villain in the world of Jujutsu Kaisen. This is the literal King of Curses himself. He has probably some of the best understanding of cursed energy and what exactly it means to use cursed energy out of everybody, and we see this in the fact that he literally got the 10 shadows, something that, like, we can assume that he's never really possessed himself throughout his entire 1,000-year existence, and he was able to use it at a way more effective level than even somebody like Megumi was, and he's had that technique for his whole life. So we know that Megumi already is a prodigy. Megumi is very smart at fighting, and somebody like Sukuna showed him that he really knew nothing about his own innate technique, and Sukuna just got it. Sukuna has the greatest understanding of cursed energy out of anybody, so it makes complete sense that he would be able to literally adapt his own technique to be able to not only bypass somebody's cursed energy or bypass it and get stronger within their cursed energy and, you know, kind of accumulate to them. It makes sense that he's able to literally have it bypass space itself by kind of tweaking his own cursed energy. At a base level, his ability to use cleave and dismantle, cleave specifically, already adjusts itself to the owner's cursed energy or the attackee's cursed energy. So what's kind of stopping him from applying that same effect and getting rid of the space in between him and the person that he is attacking? When you kind of think of all this put together, the fact that Sukuna just isn't your run-of-the-mill person, he's a prodigy among prodigies, and he really is the strongest for a reason, on top of the fact that he kind of already got the blueprints or the baseline of what he wanted to do from kind of watching Mahoraga fight Gojo, and on top of the fact that his innate ability or the cleave and dismantle already kind of had that property of being able to adjust itself, it makes sense that he was able to add that adjustment onto his own ability and do the same thing that Mahoraga was able to do. On top of that, I did mention this in one of my other videos. I mentioned the fact that he would most likely use the idea that he has been using the 10 shadows and not his own cleave and dismantle to maybe catch Gojo off guard. You have to remember that the last time that he used cleave and dismantle was at the very beginning of the fight. The last time he used it was at the beginning, and he never touched it again, so it makes sense that him using it again randomly out of nowhere with the adaptation that it is able to hit Gojo would completely kind of get Gojo out of the mark, since the first time he did use it, it hit Gojo and didn't do anything. The second time he ever uses it in the fight as a sort of surprise attack, maybe Gojo thought to himself, this is going to do the same thing, you know, what's going to be the difference? It didn't do anything last time, what is it going to do now? And this could have caught Gojo off guard, and we know that Gojo, even at this age, is still a little bit cocky. He's cocky whenever he fights, and we see that he was kind of high on himself. You know, he had done the black flashes, he had, you know, released the domain, he's done all of these different things, so he was kind of like in a high state where he was stronger, but at the same time he could have been a little bit reckless. And I really do feel like the idea that Sukuna didn't use his cleave and dismantle since the beginning and completely stopped using them kind of, you know, hindered Gojo's mindset in that, and, you know, maybe he thought to himself, well, cleave and dismantle didn't work in the first place, why would they work now? So he maybe got a little bit cocky, maybe he tried to walk through it, maybe he just didn't really regard it as a sort of threat at the time, and before he could kind of realize that, hey, it's actually dispelled the space in between us and it is going to hit, it was too late. And the location into where, you know, Sukuna did launch the attack also has significance in the fact that he did it in his stomach. So this is actually where your cursed technique or your cursed energy kind of comes up from in the world of Jujutsu Kaisen. So with that being kind of, you know, shot, him getting actually hit and cleaved in half from there was no way for there to be a connection between Gojo's brain and his cursed energy, so he isn't able to actually heal himself, and that's really what spelled the downfall of Gojo. Essentially though, to summarize everything that happened, what Sukuna did specifically is he took the adaptation or the idea of the adaptation that Mahoraga did and applied it onto his own cursed energy in his own cursed technique, and it makes sense that he's able to do it. You're able to adjust your cursed energy and kind of do different things with it, and who better to do this other than the King of Curses himself? I also think that my theory of him, not using his cleave and dismantle and making Gojo kind of feel like he does need Mahoraga to finish it off was a good way of him playing into his mind and making him think, hey, now that I've defeated Mahoraga, this is Gojo thinking, I've defeated Mahoraga, I've defeated the other Shikigami, well, what is he gonna do now? And that's probably how Gojo was kind of thinking in the fight, and that's exactly what everybody was thinking. Nobody thought that he'd be able to launch out this attack that dispelled the space in between them, but he was able to, and my theory, I think, was very correct in the fact that he kind of prepared Gojo to forget the fact that he has other abilities, and this was kind of the downfall of Gojo in going into this fight. In my personal opinion, I think the way that Sukuna did win was actually good writing on Gege's part, and I feel like this video will shed to light and bring, the idea that this was pretty decent writing to a lot of people that are saying that this is not good writing. A lot of people are saying, this is bad, this makes no sense, but it actually makes a lot of sense. With that being said though, if you agree with anything I said in this video today, let me know in the comment section down below if you agree with how I feel that this fight went and why Gojo actually did get defeated by Sukuna's hands. It's just that Sukuna is just so smart at, cursed energy and Jujutsu itself, and the idea that Gojo maybe got a little bit cocky and forgot that he does have other means of defeating him, and this kind of led to his downfall. But let me know what you guys think of that in the comment section down below. Also, like the video if you liked it and subscribe, as it really does help me out, and I really do appreciate each and every one of you guys for sticking around. Thank you for watching, and I'm out. Peace.